Welcome back to the Politics Aside podcast. We are the top-ranked political commentary show on the Evansville Podcast Network. Jason looks at me funny every time I say that, but it's true because we're the only political commentary podcast on the Evansville Podcast Network. I am Justin Groenert.
I'm Matthew Neville.
And Matt, where do you want to start with the speech last night?
I mean, I think that's the most pressing thing to talk about. I mean,
we didn't really set this up to come back. Our fearless producer, Jason, had been out for a couple of weeks, so we took a little hiatus. I'm glad we did, because there's been a lot of speed bumps and up and downs in the world of Donald Trump and the White House. But last night, Matt, I got to tell you, it was a really good night for the president. A really good night. And you know why?
because he didn't do anything ridiculously crazy.
Because for the first time since he took office, he acted presidential. Literally to a T. He played the whole thing out.
Yeah.
It was a decent speech. Didn't really say a ton, but it hit all the notes that get his base wired up. It didn't say anything outlandish and crazy. Some of the stats, you know, are fidgety, but we can fact check any president on that. Fine. Sure. The first lady showed up, which is an improvement because she hasn't really been around much.
True.
And at the end of the day, he got in and out. You know, I think some CNN poll had it at 74%, had a positive view of the speech.
Yeah, Sean Spicer was tweeting out CNN polls, which amused me greatly.
And by the way, did you see Jake Tapper's throwdown after that?
Yes, I did. It was amazing.
It was pretty great. So all in all, I think, and again, I said this the first time after the inauguration, that at some point he's going to act presidential, and then the wheels fell off for a month and a half. But, you know, I think Donald Trump just likes to be liked, right? That's his MO.
It's what his focus been his entire life, is just having the people in the room wherever he's at like him.
So he has a performance like this that is fairly roundly well thought of for what he's been dealing with. I'd say it was a really good night. Why does he not use that as a catapult to, I don't know, act presidential all the time?
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
I would hope, because again, we Abdul talked about this, but you know, a lot of the stuff that Donald Trump deals with, and jump in and help me out here, but when you start tangling with the media and you start, there's no flow in the White House. Anybody can go in and out of the Oval Office anytime they want to. Anybody can run to their first TV camera that they want to. Steve Bannon has said point blank that, you know, if you think you're getting something other than what we got on the campaign, you're crazy, which I think is a terrible idea. You have Kellyanne Conway being Kellyanne Conway. I don't even really want to go there, but I'll let you if you want.
I forgot that in my recap of the break. I forgot about the Kellyanne Conway hockey and Ivanka Trump stuff.
You had that. You had, you know, the Bowling Green massacre misspeak.
You had the Michael Flynn, where she's out there saying that he has the full president's support, and 6 hours later he's out the door.
Now, in fairness, that's like it happens all the time. It happens in sports all the time. The GM comes out and says, "We've got the full support of our coach."
But it's not 6 hours later, though.
In a lot of cases, the writing is already on the wall. Now, maybe not 6 hours, but within the week, generally, when you get that endorsement at the end of the year, that coach is packing up their locker room. So it's not, that one wasn't as bad. I think that one was bad only because it perpetuated the narrative that they can't get their story straight and that they are just make fast and loose with the facts and everything else. I think that one thing in and of itself wasn't bad, but again, it's a death by 1,000 cuts.
Sure.
At this point. You know, Sean Spicer taking on the New York Times and CNN, and guys, you're going to lose that fight, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to lose it. So I hope that at the end of the day, the White House decides, you know, there's an easy way to do this, and I can still do what I need to do, and there's a hard way to do it. And the first month and a half, they've gone out of their way to self-inflictedly make it hard. Whereas the presidency's a hard enough job as it is, right? Why go out of your way to pick fights just because? I don't understand it, but
You're singing my tune there. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, one thing I have noticed is, you know, I am such a huge political nerd that I get the Donald Trump tweets as alerts through my Twitter app. Sure. And one of the things I usually enjoy every morning as I wake up, I roll over to the bed, I grab my phone, I look at the Donald Trump tweets.
Okay.
There's not been really many tweets over the past couple of days. I don't know if that's just kind of an anomaly or if he's making more of the transition to I'm going to be presidential, and presidential isn't picking fights on Twitter.
And that is my hope. That is sincerely my hope. I think as he sees that life is easier when he does things in a certain way, without, and I'm not saying you don't have to kind of give away that gung-ho, I'm going to break up the establishment and do things my own way, but you can do it in a way that's not so childish. Such an F you to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that as they exert more control over the process in the West Wing, how stuff flows in and out, how you actually message things instead of having 13 surrogates run out and do their I mean, Sean Miller, that guy. I mean, seriously, these guys are smart. Like, this is what I don't understand. These people got there for a reason. These people got an individual elected president of the United States.
That's a hard thing to do.
You're not dumb. You're not. You have to be somewhat smart in the world of how politics works to get somebody elected president. Like, I don't care how bad the other candidate was. Donald Trump won as much as Hillary Clinton lost. I'll take my own point away from me a little bit. I mean, Donald Trump won the White House.
Yeah.
He beat the most talented field of Republicans probably ever, short of the 1860 primary with, Salmon Chase and Abraham Lincoln and the rest of the crew. You've got to have some kind of intelligence to pull that off. So I don't understand some of the amateur stuff that goes on. So needless to say, I was very pleasantly surprised. I mean, he had some of his quirks, there was a couple of points there where he
was doing this thing with his jacket where he kind of like lifted it up.
But he always kind of does that.
I don't know if he was just fidgety or...
I think there was some of that, but he stayed on script. And I don't know that we've seen Donald Trump on script that religiously ever.
There was only a couple of times where you could kind of tell he was going off script, but even then it was like a sentence. And then, it wasn't 2 or 3 minutes of just rambling of whatever was going on in his head. He was kind of staying to the script. He was reading off the teleprompter like you're supposed to do in this situation.
And that's where I think part of the problem that the White House has had to this point is Sean Spicer having the dual role of communications director and press secretary.
Those are two really tough jobs.
And they're two different jobs.
Yeah.
And when you don't necessarily have the full-throated support of the president because you have two rough outings and Donald Trump has a certain proclivity for weighing in on things, it makes it virtually impossible. I mean, he still has the worst job in Washington. Still, to this day. And, SNL has, eloquently decided.
Those have been fantastic. SNL has been fantastic.
Right. And in case you didn't know, they are spinning off Weekend Update to a weekly sitcom.
I did not know that.
Yes, they are working on putting that together.
Part of my favorite part of SNL.
I think it's going to be a Thursday night, I think.
I know they did that like towards the end of 2012 election, I think they did.
Yeah, they do. They usually will do some of the election stuff. But this is going to be a full-blown ongoing episodic deal.
They figured out that they're going to get so much material that they can just do 22 minutes a week.
Right. So again, all in all, a really good night. I did find it weird. Did you notice how everybody coordinated their ties? It was strange.
I couldn't tell if that was coincidence or if...
McConnell was wearing a blue tie. Paul Ryan had on a blue tie. The vice president had on a blue tie. There were several members of Congress that were right there that had a blue tie. It had to have been coordinated. It had to have been. And I was surprised it wasn't red because normally that's the Donald
Republican
MO,
red and
is he wears a power red tie and a dark suit and a white shirt and that's it. All in all, again, I thought it was a pretty good speech. I think he did his job and got out. My next question, and this is where I think there's legitimate skepticism because quite frankly, the inauguration went off fairly well without a hitch. And we all thought maybe, just maybe. My hope is that Steve Bannon moderates himself a little bit, not to the point of destroying the establishment like he wants to, whatever, fine, but to do it in a way that's less stick a middle finger in your face and just carpet bomb everything. What was your take on the night? You watched it. You took notes. You did more than I did. You actually took some notes. So what's your take?
I mean, I thought the speech was what he needed it to be. He stayed on message. He stayed on script. He didn't do anything crazy. He didn't have anybody shout at him. Thank God. I was terribly worried that we were going to have a Joe Wilson, you lie moment. I was sitting there thinking, please, Democrats, just sit there and behave.
Right.
Be adults.
Right.
I'm very thankful they did.
You did have the one like
get some murmurs kind of going on.
No. You had the fashion protest where all the women wore white suits, but that's not. That's appropriate. If you're going to protest, that's how you do it. I was horrified during that whole Joe Wilson thing. Yeah. I was working on a congressional staff at the time, and that's the kind of crap that needs to stop.
Absolutely.
Like in anymore, it's just been amplified since then. I mean, that was what, 2011, 2012 maybe, and we're now 4-5 years later, and it's just gotten worse. Like at some point, we need adults to get back into public service, and we can stop the. So I was, again, to your point, I was glad that there was no overt lunacy. I mean, the whole shaking of the hand thing. I'm rolling my eyes for those of you listening at home.
What's the shaking of the hand thing?
Where there were several of the
they were doing like the
leaders.
Thumbs down.
Well, no,
they weren't
going to shake his hand when he walked by. I don't know if it actually happened or not, but there was news reports going in that they were not going to they were going to overtly not shake the president's hand as he walked by.
Childish people.
Well,
that's childish. But it's the president,
right?
I'm me. If he offers to shake my hand as awkwardly as he still does it, I'm still going to shake his hand. He's probably going to try to yank me across the room like he did to Judge Gorsuch's. But
hey, everybody's got a power play with that.
And that is a massive power play.
And again, but that even then. Okay, it's childish, but that's not.
It's not interrupting a speech.
It's not horribly disrespectful,
right? I was happy to see everybody behaved. I mean, I had some substance issues. I liked that he started the speech the way that he did, talking about the attacks that had been going on in Jewish organizations. I liked that a lot. That was the correct way of starting.
Let's take a second. First of all, I want to say, I think on behalf of the podcast, we're with you. Being in Indianapolis this week, that hit really close to home with the bomb threat that went in, and then to turn around the next day and read that happening in Evansville, it's surreal and it's ridiculous. We live in 2016. Like I still can't fathom how we live in a society that happens.
Well, we live in 2017. But
17, that's true. There you go. Hey man, I'm tired. I apologize. It's been a long couple of weeks, but. Needless to say, it's ridiculous and it's horrible. And I wish the president had come out stronger sooner. I think there is a certain role for the leader of the free world to make comments like that. And I wish that he would do more to overtly squash some of this stuff. But I do appreciate that he came out swinging.
That was a great kind of bipartisan, non-political way of starting off in a joint session.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm glad that he did it. I hope that he continues to. Because
I hope so too.
This is not the way that a civilized society should act against anybody.
No.
The Jewish community, the LGBT community, any of them. We don't need to act like that. It's reprehensible on every level possible. So to your point, that's a very good way. That was a very solid way to open the speech. It kind of perked my ears up. I'm not going to lie. I thought maybe at that point we were going to see a different guy, and I think we did.
Yeah.
So back to your.
I mean, he used the statistic that I hate more than any statistic that exists in the world than the 95 million not in the workforce number. I hate that statistic because it is the most ridiculous statistic to use to talk about the economy.
Well, in fairness, though, when we are not counting in the unemployment rate those that are not actively seeking employment, your jobless number is wrong too. When people quit looking for jobs, they fall out of the number.
I'm not going to disagree with that, but counting my two 80-year-old grandmothers as not being in the workforce because they live in nursing homes and can't work is a ridiculous thing to be using as a statistic for what the economy is.
That's fair, but to the other side, to have a 40-year-old man that can't find a job and just decided to give up looking for a job while he stays on his unemployment benefits and perpetual welfare state after that, or just straight goes bankrupt because there's nothing left to get, isn't a fair way to talk about Barack Obama's job performance numbers when there were a lot of people coming out of 08, 09, and 10 that just simply quit looking for a job. So it goes both ways. To your point, I understand your I don't like that number. It's one of those
shock value numbers more than anything.
Well, but I mean, Donald Trump
is a shock value
president. Numbers all the time, and half of them are just made up. So, I mean, there's that. I was actually pretty surprised at how factually accurate his speech was.
He did compared to others.
All in all,
that was pretty good.
He did pretty well, all things considered.
I was surprised that he only mentioned the wall once, and he mentioned Mexico paying for the wall 0 times.
That's because it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
We've been saying that forever. Mexico has said that since we started.
Vicente Fox has said it with some 4-letter words in there too, which has been. If you follow Vicente Fox on Twitter, it is outstanding.
He and the Donald do not.
They're not gonna have a tea party anytime soon.
Oh no, they are not going to get together anytime soon. Look, again, I think there were bigger things to tackle in the speech. I think if you see the pushback from the immigrant ban, and you see the somewhat moderation possibly on the immigration stuff now. Reports.
What it looks like they're dropping one country.
Well, no. I'm talking though the idea that the White House may be open to having some sort of status for non-violent criminal immigrants now.
I saw that, but I figured if that was actually going to happen, there would have been some kind of mention in the speech.
I don't think he wants to mention it. When that's one of your key catalyst reasons for being in the White House, that's not something you put front and center.
So was the wall.
Yeah, but he did talk about the wall. I'm saying he's moderating it a little bit, I think, to buy himself some ability to change the subject. If he does go down a road where we're not going to round up 11 million people, we're going to round up the 2 million that are really bad people and ship them out and hope we don't get too many of them wrong. But again, you're not going to round up 11 million people. It's just
even with the 100,000 extra people,
you're not going to do it. So you have to do something. Now, I do believe though too that most of the people that were polled that supported Donald Trump trust Donald Trump more than the policy itself. So if there is anybody that could uniquely pull this off in a weird way, it's going to be him.
Because I'm hoping he moderates it a little bit. I'm hoping that he does that exact path.
Right.
But I don't have faith in it.
Well, and again, we have to wait and see what happens, obviously. But reports out of the White House are, as of yesterday, I think I read the article, that there is some thawing potentially of the we're going to round everybody up and ship them all back. Again, to be continued. But we'll keep moderating and watching that situation as it unfolds. What else you got for me?
I liked that Keith Ellison was sitting with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I was afraid he was going to lose some of his progressive street cred by doing that, but I liked that. I liked that Keith Ellison brought Tom Perez as his guest, and I know that's something we're going to discuss a little bit more in the DNC race. But I thought that was a nice little thing from a Democrat that wants to see everyone play nice. That was a nice thing to see.
Sure.
I know a lot of people have been focusing on the Navy SEAL that passed away. And there are some people on my side that are trying to make, I guess, political hay of Trump mentioning it. I'm not a fan of that. I think that I have no real issue with the way Trump handled it. And I think more than anything, that was an important moment for that widow. I think that was not necessarily for Trump. It was for the widow. It was a moment for her that she can look back and tell her kids, see, this was an important moment. This is how important your father was.
Yeah.
And there are people on the left that are trying to say it was pure politics and disgusting. And I hate that stuff.
I do too.
I hate it.
Well, first of all, I agree with you completely. And there were episodes where, if you're going to go down that road, Barack Obama did the same thing. A lot of times, it may not have been a widow of a slain soldier, but that's part of what that is.
Yeah.
First of all, Second of all, I agree. I think it was an absolutely appropriate moment. It was spellbinding. I mean, it really was. It was.
I got tingles on my arms watching it. It was.
Yeah, it was unlike. I mean, we've seen a lot of really unique moments. I think you go back to 2002 when George W. Bush had the fireman's badge and he had his mom in the crowd, in the audience. There are moments like that but that one was unique in that Van Jones said it best. And he's been, I think,
and Van Jones is no Trump fan,
as the loudest and probably most vulgar of the Trump haters. He point blank said that was when Donald Trump became the president of the United States.
Yeah, it was a good moment,
and it was so well handled. And for a guy like Donald Trump, who is such, so egocentric, and for, it always seems to be about him, for that moment to happen and for him to have handled it the way he did, and then to allow a 2-minute standing ovation.
Yeah.
It was pretty pitch perfect. And I thought it was very well done. Hat tip to the president, hat tip to the staff, hat tip to everyone. Cause I thought, again, that was a very, very well done moment.
Absolutely.
And I like I said, I don't feel like stuff like that. I hope, and granted, I know we live in a political world where there is a calculus that goes into everything, but I hope that we don't get so cynical where the majority starts viewing stuff like that from the partisan prism of, well, he just did that because it might look good, instead of it being the right thing to do.
Right.
And to your point, I mean, you're just as mad about it as, I am when our side did it to, President Obama. I think there's a time and a place for politics, and there's a time and a place to honor certain people, and especially, our fallen military heroes. I think it was just, we need to do more of it. And I think it's that kind of stuff that can help bridge the sort of partisan divide we have. And hopefully we see more of it.
Hopefully.
Well, hopefully we don't have to see more of it, in the sense that we don't have, a lot more loss of life, but we do need to honor our fallen heroes. And I thought last night was a very, very nice moment.
It was. I think the last thing I would bring up was, he mentioned this voice organization, the Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement. What the hell is that? I mean, what is that besides really trying to? I mean, I think it's going to be something similar to what they did at the RNC when I was watching. And I would just kind of put my head in my hands and just shook my head of when they brought up these family members of people who had been either killed or accidentally hurt or whatever by undocumented immigrants.
Right.
It's just, to me, that's just, it's disgusting. What is that besides just trying to perpetuate, number one, this idea that immigrants commit more crimes at a higher rate than everybody else, which they don't. But I think it's more of creating this sentiment of that they are dangerous, they are bad, they are here to harm us. And I think that's very harmful to the political discourse.
I don't disagree with that. I don't know enough about it. I mean, I saw the speech once and wasn't paying that close of attention. I was kind of multitasking as it was on. I will refrain from further comment on that specifically, although I do think the, continuing baiting of, immigrant bashing and all this other stuff. Look, man, there are bad apples in any population. They're everywhere. Like, why don't we just round up all the bad guys instead of just perpetuating the stereotypes? You know what I mean? Like, last time I checked, there were plenty of white people that commit murder.
Absolutely.
There's bad apples everywhere. So maybe, this obviously, that was kind of the hallmark of Donald Trump's campaign. And as he's moderating himself potentially.
Yeah. I was going to jump in there.
Potentially moderating himself on the issue. He's going to do that quietly while loudly blustering all of the bad guys. I think this just provides him more cover to maybe politically buy himself cover to do the right thing while keeping the red meat flowing for his constituency. Maybe.
And it'll all be supposed to see how it plays out.
Right. And again,
who knows?
Who knows? You're right. No, I think that's the one thing we can both agree on in this podcast is that nobody knows what's about to happen in Washington. So, you have anything else on the speech?
How about Steve Beshear? How about that?
See, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and let you off the hook here and make this rant so you don't have to.
I'll join in on it.
I'm sure you will. So let me get this straight. You guys have just lost the White House. You lost a Senate majority that you should have won, theoretically. You do not have control of the House of Representatives. You have a vast minority of governorships. You have lost more state legislative seats in the last 8-year period than probably in the history of mankind. And you bring back a retired retread who has no future in the party to give the rebuttal to Donald Trump after you just replaced the DNC chairman. How does this happen? How
about that Steve Beshear? That's all I got. I
the
don't
Mr.
understand
Burns
it.
of politics, man. How does this happen?
I just don't understand it. I mean, looking at the list of the people that did it, that did the response. I mean, the last two were Joni Ernst and Nikki Haley. Both were very young, energetic people who are making big waves in the party now. Hey, let's give a chance of someone that's our future.
Keep going down the list because they're all the future of the Republican Party. Now, granted, they've matured some of them. I mean, Jindal was a congressman that turned into a governor who's now retired. You had
Bob McDonald.
You had Bob McDonald, who was a governor that got in trouble and has no future in the party anymore.
And Paul Ryan.
But you got Paul Ryan. You got Marco Rubio.
Marcus Rubenstein.
What is the
Florida.
Marcus Rubenstein?
He's in the witness protection program. You can't find him in Florida.
Stop it.
He will not meet with any of his constituents in Florida.
Stop it.
He's in the witness protection program.
I don't buy that for a second. Stop it. Okay.
If you've seen Marco Rubio, please alert someone.
I think you say that about a lot of Republican members at this point.
It's because they won't meet with their constituents.
Stop it. Well, in fairness, this is no different than 2010.
And I would disagree with it then as well.
I know. I agree too. And, I think, again, but here's the deal. I'm going to sidetrack this Mr. Burns conversation for a second to say this about the protesters. I have no problem with political dissent. None whatsoever. I am all about it. You and I get along just fine. We don't agree on 85% of policy issues. And you and I will have a dialogue about that all day long.
Yeah.
But you know what happens when you and I talk about it? We generally either agree to disagree or we at least move one way or the other a little bit to where at least we can understand where we're coming from. What does standing up and screaming your head off at a legislator do to help any kind of discourse? What does that do? Both sides do it. I'm not saying this is a Democrat thing right now because the Tea Party did it in 2010 and 2009 after Obamacare passed and TARP 2 got passed. And what does that do? What does it do? What did the lady that lost her skull at Mitch McConnell? What does that do to the political process? What, do you really think you're going to persuade Mitch McConnell by calling him every name in the book to make yourself feel better? Like, why not just have a conversation? Can we not be a little bit respectful of everybody in the room?
I agree.
And have a grown-up conversation at some point? I mean, I think, and we've talked about kind of how we're going down this slippery rabbit hole, but why can't we just disagree and do it in a way where we can exchange ideas? You're not going to do it by yelling and ranting and raving and being disruptive and, taking your ball and going home and trying to get arrested so you can make a headline somewhere. That doesn't do anybody any good either.
Sure, but those are the vast majority, the vast minority of people. Those are the
ones we talk about.
5%. But they're the ones that get on TV.
Yeah, but look at what happened in the last 2 weeks. I mean, look at any one of them that had a town hall. You had people being drug out because they were looking for their 5 minutes of fame to be an ass clown to a sitting United States senator or a member of Congress. Now, whether they deserve it or not is, again, to be discussed. I get there's a lot of frustration out there and there's a lot of fear. Absolutely. But I think there's a way to handle it and there's a way not to. And if you could have a fair exchange of ideas, whether you like it or not, a lot of these legislators would be way more willing to do it. Now, I think they should do it anyway. I think that's part of their job.
That's part of it, yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. But I also can understand where after the first 5 minutes and you have chanting and booing and hissing, and regardless of what you say, regardless of your position, because they're all coached to do it. I've seen the packet. There's a whole like national underground grassroots campaign to...
Does that packet come before or after the George Soros check?
Well, I don't know about the George Soros check. And
that was again, a joke for everyone listening. These are not paid protesters. But
I think some of them are. But I think the
maybe
vast
some of
majority...
the organizers, the ones that are in charge of it.
The vast majority are constituents. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, granted, they may be riled up by the guys that are paid, sure. But, I mean, the Tea Party, that was essentially what the Tea Party was for 8 years. But again, I think there's a way to do it. And there's a way not to do it. And I think... I just hope that we can get over some of this just anger and vitriol and histrionics for the sake of histrionics. And let's talk about why there is a subtle anger and why there is this angst in the country instead of just yelling about it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, again, I want you to have a debate. I want you to be a part of the process, whether I agree with your position or not. We need more people involved in the process. But I don't know what good it serves to just yell and name call.
It doesn't.
And disrupt these things. I mean, we had 4 state reps in the 4-H Center. And we went 2 hours straight. And we had several lively exchanges. But they were civil. Ultimately, we kind of had to, I was the moderator, so we had to agree to disagree on a gun issue. But we had a 20-minute back and forth about it. And the legislators heard where this specific individual was coming from. This specific individual heard where the legislators were coming from. And while we didn't come to some consensus, because I don't think you're going to sway a lot of people on certain issues, it was a really good exchange of ideas. So, I just hope that we can protest without being ridiculous.
Preach it.
See, we are getting along more and more. Jason, man.
I don't like it.
remember Kumbaya doesn't sell, right? So maybe I need to start bashing you about not seeing Batman. Joker.
I'm working on it.
Okay. But back to the
Steve
the
rebuttal.
Rebuttal. And this kind of ties into the DNC race a little bit. Why in God's name did you not let Mayor Pete have his minute in the sun? Well, hell, why didn't you make him the DNC chairman for starters?
I was pulling for him left and right.
But this is where I think, this whole idea that the world's going to come down around the Republicans in 2 years, in 4 years, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And you know why I don't buy it? Because as far as I can tell, the Democratic Party has a bench, but they don't want to use them. They don't have a confidence to use them. I mean, what does Tom Perez get you? What does he get you? You just perpetuated the Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders fight. And you can tell me that Keith Ellison and Tom Perez are buddy and, everything.
They're BFFs. They're
everybody's
on TV all the
singing
time.
Kumbaya because he's the vice chair of the Democratic Party.
That was a good move. That was a really smart political move.
I don't disagree.
First thing out of the gate.
I don't disagree because they had to do it. But you can't tell me they're going to get along very well. You can't tell me that the progressive wing of the party is going to be okay with Tom Perez being your guy.
Just like there's plenty of Republicans that aren't good with Donald Trump being the guy.
Right.
You're going to have that in every party.
Right. But, I mean, it's... with the lack of bench that the Democrats have, I don't think that's a riff that's going to help you guys win elections.
No, we definitely need a bench. That's
and
one thing we've lacked in the past.
And at the end of the day,
years.
Guys like Pete are your future, man. Guys like Pete keep me up at night as a Republican. You look at Dan Forstall in the State House. You look at Christina Hale in the State House. You look at Pete. I mean, hell, Indiana could be the freaking future of the Democratic Party in some ways.
Yeah.
In terms of the talent that you have. I don't know that you have a constituency in Hoosiers, because I think we're a fairly conservative state. But I think the model is there. And for whatever reason, you guys haven't figured it out yet.
If you're waiting for me to disagree, you're going to wait a little bit. I mean,
we are agreeing way too much. I need a new co-host. I need somebody that's going to tell me I'm an idiot. Can we get some other people to tell me I'm an idiot?
There's a line outside the door.
Yeah, we got some mean liberals on deck ready to go. I mean, I was a big supporter of Pete because I think Pete was, as you mentioned, he was someone that kind of treaded that middle ground. He wasn't a Hillary person. He wasn't a Bernie person. He was able to bring in kind of the Midwestern values. He was able to sell things that the other two couldn't. He was able to bring a different point of view. He's a military veteran who knows guns, who knows all of these Midwestern things that can really go into those Midwestern states and not seem out of place.
Exactly.
And that's why I wanted him.
Why again?
He didn't have the national brand.
Hillary Clinton. No, it didn't need to. I don't think
he did.
I don't know. I don't know that he thought that he would legitimately win. I thought honestly that his chance would be if it got to a third ballot. And I when Harrison dropped out and kind of threw his support behind Perez, that was kind of the death knell. And I think Pete withdrew before the first vote because he didn't want to
get 10 votes, and it just
seemed... and then he be the 15 votes that keep it from a win.
Right,
he's being a good team guy, but why not let him be the next Barack Obama or the next Marco Rubio, or name the future star of the party that gets their platform and run with it? Why not embrace that? I like I said, I love the future of the Republican Party because for as messed up as we are, we're still slightly less messed up than the Democratic Party is, it seems like. At the state level, at the national level, like, we get away with a lot because it just drives me bonkers. Can you do something about that, Matt?
What I can offer you is, we can offer you a seat at the table of the Democratic Party if you'd like to.
I'm not interested in that. But I mean, granted, I have my own issues with certain wings of the Republican Party right now. But
I really wish it would have been Pete. I think that would have, as you mentioned, it would have given you guys as Republicans kind of a little startle. It would have made you think, oh wow, because he wasn't the obvious choice.
No,
he wasn't who you got. You guys came into it thinking it's either going to be Tom Perez or Keith Ellison. More than likely Tom Perez, and that's what was going to happen.
Well, and that's
what happened.
I mean, and that is what happened.
Yeah.
So, but again, I hope that the party, for their own sake, can figure out how to get out of their own way. I think if you look at what happened in 2016, aside from sort of the Hillary issue and the her questionable role as a candidate and sort of this change narrative that ended up surprising a lot of people, it was the fact that she couldn't connect in the Midwest. She lost a lot of Rust Belt states that she should not have lost.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was what, 80,000 votes in those like
Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania.
I mean, it's inexcusable for someone like Hillary Clinton to lose those three states. Inexcusable. And it was because they don't buy it anymore. The Democratic Party has sold their soul to the liberal left. You're a coast party. Your party's strength is on the East Coast and the West Coast. Period.
That's where most of the people are.
I guess, but
they're just not dispersed in the right locations.
Not if you want to win in the electoral college.
They're not necessarily dispersed in the right locations, but there were, there's plenty of those people there.
But you've alienated a lot of Republicans. I mean, how many Democrats do you know that say, "Well, I'm a Hoosier Democrat"? How many of them say that? 95% of the Democrats that I know go out of their way to say, "Oh, I'm a Hoosier Democrat. I'm not exactly Barack Obama. I'm not exactly with Bernie Sanders. I'm not exactly a liberal. I'm a Hoosier Democrat." Joe Donnelly is the epitome of that. At least that's the narrative he tells. He's not a liberal. He's a conservative Democrat. Yeah. And that's what this state is. That's what a lot of Midwest Democrats
you have to be
are.
In Indiana.
Right.
Unless you live in Marion County or Lake County.
But here's the deal. The National Party doesn't buy it. They don't care. And that's why you lost the White House. And that's why you're losing state legislatures in the Midwest in droves. It's because the left coasts and the right coast are alienating the Midwest. And at what point do you look at that and try to stop the bleeding? That's what I can't figure out. So I hope I hope they learn their lesson, and I hope that Pete has a illustrious career. He's doing a hell of a job in South Bend.
Absolutely.
A lot of my Republican friends will probably scorn me, but he is. And he ran a good race, and I think
he's got a big future, I think.
Can we have a pronunciation of the last name?
Buttigieg.
Oh, I was really hoping for Buttigieg.
That is close, but I believe my cohort in crime is correct.
I think Pete's going to have a good political career. He's got a good future. I'm somewhat kind of relieved that we're keeping him in Indiana because that was one concern. I mean, I would have loved to have had him as DNC chair, but I would have hated to lose him and the talent that he has in Indiana politics.
I think this is a 1956 JFK moment for him. You know, JFK could have been the vice president of the United States, or at least the nominee, who would have gotten pounded by Eisenhower in 56, which means he's not the Democratic nominee for president in 1960. But what it did was it raised his profile, and it got his name out on a much larger scale than he would have had he not won, or had he not run.
Right.
And in the end, him not winning is probably the best thing that happened for his career. And I know several Democrats have posted on Facebook that I know that's kind of the
I think that was the goal. That was the goal, I think. I don't think he was going into it thinking I'm going to be able to steamroll and win this, but he knew that this was going to be something that was going to raise his profile, and he played it beautifully. Yeah, I mean, he was able to really come out of nowhere. He was someone that 99% of national Democrats had no idea who the hell he was. He was able to make himself a legitimate third contender among other people that had ran state parties left and right. He played it beautifully.
Yep, I agree. So we will continue to watch that. I think he has obviously a bright future. I just hope the rest of your national party follows suit and starts to moderate.
I mean, we're the liberal party. The Midwest is always going to have an issue with that. I mean, that's just, you know, but again, we're not going to be steamrolling through Montana and Idaho. That's just not going to happen with a liberal democratic philosophy in a political discourse. It's just not going to happen. The same way that Donald Trump's not going to steamroll through California. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
I get that we're kind of the coastal states, and the Midwest tends to be a lot more conservative along with the West, and that's just kind of the way it's drawn.
Right. Well, and I hope that at some point we can get back to sort of that big tent philosophy for both parties and not just, I don't know that
that's going to be tougher for you guys.
Well, that's true. I don't know.
I mean, Joe Donnelly is a conservative. I mean, you got blue dog Democrats. How many liberal Republicans do you know? I think you can name one, and even she's a moderate.
Which one are you?
Susan Collins.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that's just she's from Maine and representing her constituency.
I mean, we're still the big tent party. I think we're going to consistently be the big tent party.
I think with Bernie Sanders trying to hijack the whole thing, though, I don't know that you are going to be a whole lot longer.
What are they going to do? Start their own party?
No, but I think the more you let him moderate the terms, I mean, this is just like the Tea Party and the Republicans. When they started dictating terms on what it meant to be a Republican, that's when we got into trouble. And I think that if Bernie Sanders continues to push your party left, even though he's not a registered Democrat, which I find the ultimate irony.
Don't even get me started on that.
You're letting a guy that's not even in your party dictate the terms. It's the worst hostage deal ever. But if you keep moderating to the fringe, there's not going to be a whole lot left.
Well, not really. I mean, I think the difference between what Bernie Sanders is doing now and what the Tea Party did then is that the Tea Party was winning. The Bernie Sanders people aren't really winning. The Tea Party was able to get leadership positions. Was able to get, Mike Pence helping run the House Republicans. They were able to dictate who the Speaker of the House was going to be. The Bernie-crats can't do that.
In fairness, let's not forget that we had a lot of those crazy conservatives in a corner for a very long time. And it took them a very long time to get themselves together. So don't think that the Bernie-crats aren't going to figure it out and ultimately find some success somewhere. I mean, Elizabeth Warren is the next man up in that wing of your party, and she's not going anywhere anytime soon. So don't think for a second.
She also was a fervent supporter of Hillary Clinton.
After it was all said and done. Sure. After she didn't have a choice. And you don't think for a second that if
there were
Hillary
plenty of
Clinton
Republicans that didn't support Trump. Everybody had a choice.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I'm just saying, like, don't sit there and act like she wasn't going to raise holy hell the minute Hillary stepped out either. I mean, she's not going to sell her soul to Hillary Clinton.
Regardless of what the Bernie people think of her.
I mean, she's not. So, she has a very set view of the world and how she thinks it ought to go that sits much more in line with Bernie Sanders' view of the world, not Hillary Clinton's.
Sure.
And granted, I mean, it was a show of unity when Hillary got the nomination and she jumped on board, but you can't tell me she was all in for Hillary at the end of the day when half of the policies that Hillary wanted, taking money from Wall Street and everything else, fly in the face of everything Elizabeth Warren's tried to do in her illustrious career in Washington. Oh, what to do. I tell you. I think the world would just be better off if they listen to us.
I mean, that would be a lot more fun, I feel like.
So the Vandenberg County Democrats have a new chairman.
Well, we will, depending on when this podcast drop. I mean,
okay, potentially, but
well, I mean,
you have a name, and it's
the
name
election is on Saturday. This is what is Wednesday?
Yes, it is Wednesday right now. So we haven't really screwed up too much, so it shouldn't take Jason too long to make us sound good.
There we go.
Still time left.
Yeah, I know, right? This is why I'm trying to get in and get out. So Scott Danks, former city attorney, is going to run unopposed as of Wednesday's.
I mean, the deadline's passed.
Taping,
I mean,
so he's the next chairman.
He's the next chairman.
Two interesting things in the article in the paper. One, we confirm that Lloyd Winnicky is running for a third term. And two,
how early is that to announce?
Well, I think it was kind of forced. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't hear. I think it doesn't hurt. I mean, what does it hurt to say that you're going to run again for mayor? I mean,
it takes all the rumors I kept hearing out, but
well, I don't know that. Again, they were rumors for a reason. I mean, and who's to say he doesn't change his mind? But I was very encouraged to hear that our illustrious mayor is running for a third term. But what is your thought? And I know that you've got to be a little careful here, and I'm not going to try to put you on the spot, but this idea that the Democrat strategy is to tie every Republican to Trump. Does that work, do you think?
I mean, I think it's similar to what a lot of Republicans did in tying everyone to Barack Obama up and down the ballot. I mean, I remember it was 2010, I think, and hearing a Ron Bacon radio ad that talked about how he voted against Obamacare. I don't know how he did that. I still, for the life of me, not figured out how that vote happened. But that's just kind of the way everyone's going to compare to the boogeyman at the top.
Right.
That's just the way politics is.
But I mean,
and Winnicky's not your typical Republican.
I was going to say he's not in the Trump wing of the party. I mean, I think he's been very clear about that. There are obviously some policy differences that the two have. I guess my question is this. Do you think that is a winning strategy at a local level? I
think it can be. I think so. I think that, especially with how unpopular I think Trump is going to end up being, the farther we go down the road. I mean, when you're looking at Winnicky, you're looking at 2019. That is 3 years into a Trump presidency. God only knows what's going to be happening from there. He could be, at George W. Bush at the end levels of popularity.
Who, Trump?
Yeah.
Okay. But again, I guess my concern about that strategy, aside from it just not being factually accurate, is that it's not a national election. You're not going to get the bump that you would get even in an off-year congressional election or a presidential year, which would be 2020. Mm-hmm. It's literally a city-only election. So the dollars aren't going to be there to really tie him to Donald Trump in any meaningful way. And again, I always have a hard time. And again, the Republicans made Nancy Pelosi and the boogeyman
and Harry Reid.
And we did Harry Reid and we did Barack Obama as much as we could. But I mean, that just doesn't come up in the local races. I mean,
don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a cornerstone of any strategy you're going to have. You're obviously, with a city election, you're going to focus on city issues like finances and things like that. Okay. I think that's going to be much more of a focus, but I think it's entirely fair to be asking the questions that soon to be Chairman Danks is asking.
It's going to be interesting to watch.
It's going to be.
It's an interesting strategy to already tip too, though. And maybe it's because, I mean, look, both of the county parties are not as strong as they used to be. I think we could both say that comfortably. And maybe that's, a strategy to help capitalize on some sort of grassroots effort. I don't blame him for trying. It is a little early. It is a little strange, but then again,
when he announcing early as well.
But I think that was forced by the article. I don't know that he rolled out a campaign re-election plan. The way I read it was he confirmed it in the article.
I think confirmed it in the article, but I think he's having a fundraiser at the Hilton garden that he was going to announce that anyways. I mean, it was forthcoming within the next week or two anyways, but
okay, fair. But I don't know what a politician having a fundraiser really does for you. I mean, they all raise money incessantly, so I don't know that really tips your hand. But anyway, it's going to be an interesting couple of years. I hope that, we don't really get into the city stuff too much for a little while longer. We're going
to have so much national stuff to talk about.
Year.
It's going to be just...
Right. Next time, we are working on a potential guest. I will withhold the name until we confirm it, but hopefully we will have some more folks coming in as we get some folks into town. You got anything else you wanna say to lock this?
Is it Barack Obama?
It is not. He's too busy parasailing with rich people.
How awesome has the vacation pictures of him been? Those are just
first
awesome.
of all,
he's living it up.
Here's the deal.
Props to him for that.
Here's the deal. And I'm never going to have the former job to get this title.
I believe in you.
But you can't.
You're not getting my vote, but I believe in you.
You can't tell me there is not a better job title than former president of the United States.
Especially at his age.
Dude, you can't tell me. The dude signed a Penguin Random House is paying $60 million for a book from him and a book from Michelle. $60 million for one book each. Now, a lot of that's going to charity. There's 1 million books going to 2 nonprofits that are, literacy based. $60 million for $2. That's bonkers. And he's off parasailing with
Richard
God
Branson
knows who. And he's showing up in New York hanging out. I'm really interested because, we've already kind of had the post-president kerfuffle with the current president and Donald Trump throwing a little more gasoline, blaming Barack Obama for some of the protesting that's going on. And
you also kind of blamed him for the whole Yemen raid, too, which I didn't like.
Well,
that was kind of...
Look, you can't... okay, this is a little bit like the Cuban Missile Crisis where,
the famous JFK quote.
Look, man... Yeah, when you're winning, everybody's your best friend.
Yeah,
and
but what is the quote? It's
you have many fathers when you win, and you're an orphan when
we are butchering this quote, but it is a damn good quote. Go Google it, people.
Hold on.
Ich bin Berliner.
No, that's not.
That's. Oh, sorry.
Well, Justin's looking it up.
I am.
We're gonna.
But anyway, to the larger point, though, that stuff just doesn't pop up 15 days into a presidency. I mean, there had to have been some kind of plan somewhere. Now, again, the buck stops at the guy in the Oval Office, and rightly so. I think that you have to kind of own that, and I think JFK for the most part did after the Pay of Pigs fiasco, whereas Donald Trump was a little more willing to
blame the generals as well. Which that quote was just
right.
That was obviously one of those that you walk out of the room and you think, wow, I really want to have that one back.
Victory has 1,000 fathers. But defeat is an orphan.
There you go.
That is the exact quote from the 35th president of the United States.
There you go. Oprah Winfrey might be running for president.
I did see this. She said after the Donald Trump win, she finally decided that she may well be smart enough and have enough street cred to run for president of the United States.
I mean, we're going to have a crowded primary with Kanye and Oprah. It's going to be crowded.
Are we sure that Kanye is going to run as a Democrat?
I don't know.
I mean, he's the one meeting with Trump in Trump Tower. I mean, I'm just saying.
That's just two crazy people meeting. That's all that is. That's just two crazy people having a burger. That's all that is.
I think on that note, we're going to wrap this podcast up. Thank you again for listening. We appreciate it. We look forward to doing it again here soon. Now that our fearless leader Jason is back,
he's back.
His
we missed
travels.
you.
We will be a little more consistent with our taping. But thank you again for listening. I am Justin Groenert.
I am Matthew Neville. Thanks, everybody.
We will talk to you next time. Thanks.